Hi, folks. This is Dr. Kat Shrier from Water System News and the Water Show. This is another special edition of the Water Show, and we are here at the Floodplain Management Association National Conference and in Long Beach, California. And I've got some of the key players in this great event we're going to be doing, by the way, similar to what we've done in other events, other water events throughout the country. We are going to be doing a series of interviews all week long. So this is just sort of the initial intro of letting you know what to expect. And I will have you guys introduce yourselves from my left to right.
Okay, I'm Mary Seits, and I'm the Executive Director of Floodplain Management Association, and I help put on these conferences and educational programs for water resources and the integration of water.
Awesome.
Great, thank you. And I'm Mark Seits. I'm the chair of the board of directors for FMA, and I also am a full-time consultant with HDR Engineering, so I get involved both from an agency standpoint where in support of our agency clients, as well as from an organizational standpoint in leading the organization activities.
And I am Darren Soon. I'm a civil engineer and policy advisor for the California Department of Water Resources in the Division of Flood Management. I am also a board member on the Floodplain Management Association.
Awesome. And, so often when we go to these events, people are trying to keep track, and there are so many different water associations out there. So what is FMA? How does that fit within the overall picture? There's a larger organization that is part of. Tell us a little bit about the association aspect of floods. How do we do floods professionally?
You want to start, Mary?
I can give a little bit of background. The Floodplain Management Association began in 1990, and it started as an organization to promote the value of floodplains and the resource that they provide. We are a regional chapter of the Association of State Floodplain Managers. So we participate and try to stay up with them on policy, legislation, things that are just affecting floodplains in general.
And if I could add to that, we've really grown from membership of about 45 people to over 500 over the last 10 years. And it's primarily because of the interest in floodplains and bringing the collaboration opportunities that we have within events like this, with our annual conference, as you mentioned, as well as workshops and other activities that we have throughout the year, and really seeing that growing as we have events like we just experienced with Hurricane Harvey, past events as well, Katrina and Superstorm Sandy. These kind of events that raise the awareness of the need to provide flood protection. Our organization is here solely for that, to do that education and outreach for those kinds of opportunities.
From the state perspective, floodplain management is one element of our strategy. So for us, we look at it as keeping people away from the water. But we also talk about our flood projects, levees, dams, sewers. Those keep water away from people. Finally, there's emergency response. And from a state perspective, we manage flood response from starting at the local level, the counties and local agencies, and then when those resources get overrun, we come to the state and we help out there. And then if we can't help out, if we're overrun, we'll go to the federal government, Army Corps of Engineers, and then finally, it's probably people know FEMA for recovery.
Okay, so that was a really excellent point, that there's really three ways of looking at floodplains and what happens in the floodplains. So run those by me again. The first one was?
Well, when we're talking about floodplain management plan and keeping people away from the water, so those are your land use policies.
Okay.
Local level.
So that's basically when people were talking about, oh, well, they should have known better in Hurricane Harvey. They shouldn't have had their houses built so close to the water, or a lot of sort of environmental equity issues that come up around this idea of, well, low-income housing was put down in the floodplains, trailer parks down in the floodplains. So how much does that come into play? Is it just the physical aspects of keeping that out of the floodplains, or is it also the social economic aspects?
I think it's both. But then there's things that we've done throughout the state that we've already put people on things, right? And you have elements of climate change, sea level rise, and things like that, where we have more extreme events. Things like Hurricane Harvey, which I understand was over a 500-year event. Nobody anticipated something like that. Unprecedented. So sometimes we can't control Mother Nature. We can't predict it. We do the best we can, but then we have to respond to what's thrown at us.
It really comes down to managing risk, and
Yeah.
what we haven't known historically is what the risk is. And so we're learning more and more through predictive data and responses to storms like we just had in Sandy and Katrina. We learn from every one of these events. So we find out more of what we didn't know, and we can apply more to what we do know, and then modify it. We have land use planning issues that didn't address that. Now we can modify those and better corrections in how we manage and regulate floodplains. And that's again where we have a venue like this, at a conference, we're bringing all the experts in from the local, state, and federal level, like Aaron said, that we can use that as a platform to collaborate, and so that everybody understands what we're dealing with. It may not necessarily mean things are going to change, but at least there's better understanding. There's a conversation that can start.
There's also an acknowledgement. How we used to look at flooding, as Mark was talking about, is different. Our flood system up in Northern California here has a lot greater demands on Canadian environment. So right now, our main theme here for the conference is integration, like the people, water, and the environment. So multi-benefit projects you heard actually before. Those are the things that we're looking at. And so our flood system, it was only contemplated in its early stages to just protect people, but now we know it's home to habitat, to species, native species. So how do we blend all these things together and still be able to protect people and assets?
Yeah,
while
absolutely.
protecting the environment?
And there's just so much that's been done on that. That was actually what I did my dissertation on at Colorado State, looking at recharge basins and how they're used for habitat for waterfowl and as well as recharging the aquifers. And I'm looking at here, one of the things that people have done with floodplains, I don't know if you guys can see this, but using those, instead of putting houses, they're putting parks. Hey, how are you doing? Instead of putting houses, they're putting parks, putting wildlife areas. Setting aside those areas that are likely to be flooded anyway at some point. Whether it's every year, every 10 years, every 100 years, and of course the term 100-year floodplain isn't 100 years. I think we've gone over that before.
1% chance in any given year.
Right. But yeah, so there's really a lot more integration from what we're seeing in terms of how communities are addressing floodplains to ensure they're getting those functions, right, of habitat and recharge, that they're not being used for people, and at least for houses, but can be used for things like parks.
Right. And I would say that the common element is our resource, it's water, right? So as I connect it now to supply as well. We just came out of the drought or state of extremes, too much or too little water at any given time. I would also point, if you're living in Southern California, while Northern California's dams and weirs and levees are important, because before that water can get into the aqueduct and come down to Southern California, it needs to travel through those same rivers and bypasses to get there. So the integrity of the flood system in Northern California is important to Southern Californians as well.
By the way, I want to make sure that we're getting close enough to the microphone, so make sure you project your voices, and if you want to step up towards the mic, I forgot to plug in the mic. I brought the mic into the room and I forgot to plug it in. I'll get it over the course of the week. But we are also getting back to this idea of one water, and this is something that we've seen a lot of the conferences. This idea of that we're no longer, that the water professionals are no longer thinking just in terms of surface water versus groundwater, stormwater, reuse water, that it's all a resource that we can use for drinking water and non-drinking purposes. Now, then you got the floodplain people. Not always as much part of that conversation. What's happening there?
I think what we're seeing is, again, that we're not allowed to stay silos anymore. It's not, we're realizing, I think everybody's known we need to integrate, but now it's become a requirement. There's just no way you can achieve your goals, even if it may be just floodplain, within the floodplain silo by itself. You have to reach out to the regulatory folks, as Darren mentioned about the environmental issues associated with it. You have to reach out to the folks that have the infrastructure, that they're maintaining that. So we have to reach across those boundaries, both from a technical standpoint, regulatory standpoint and jurisdictional standpoint. It's not just reaching across the internal boundaries that you have within your organizations or agencies, but even across jurisdictional boundaries, because we're now looking at watershed perspectives, not just looking at my little problem, my little floodplain is what's going on upstream or downstream that needs to come into that discussion and say, how can we resolve this? The other thing that drives it is funding. You're not going to get funding working in a silo. You have to, again, you have to work collaboratively with other stakeholders in order to, to show you've got multiple benefits that the different stakeholders are getting benefits to. It's not just you. So.
And that's one of the challenges of bond funding and such. Oftentimes, through best intentions, we try to say, hey, this funding taxpayer will be used for X. Well, like Mark mentioned, we have so many other considerations that if you only use it for X, you're not allowed to sometimes, meet X, Y, or Y and Z objectives as well. So if we're truly, want to embrace multi-benefit projects and get the most for our funding, we need to craft legislation in such a way that allows for collaboration to occur. And so a lot of these conversations that we have at this conference are around this topic.
There's an African proverb we just heard at a session this morning. It says, if you want to go far, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So that's, again, where that integration comes in, where we have to go together. We have to achieve these things as a group.
Well, obviously there has been a significant event that is bringing a lot of people together, both people directly infected and everybody else who's been watching on TV and on their Facebook videos and everything else, which is Hurricane Harvey. And massive impact, massive area, fourth largest city in the United States, and not just Houston, all of those cities. Plus, not everyone recognizes that. So basically, the hurricane hit land twice. It came out and it went in again at Lake Charles, Louisiana. So it's not just southeastern Texas, it's Texas and Louisiana. So explain to us a little bit about what happened there in terms of the flooding, why it was.
Well, I think the biggest issue with that, and we've experienced many hurricanes along, primarily again, the east and Gulf Coast. We don't get them out here on the West Coast, but in terms of what I really saw the big impact there was it just stalled, again, in and out, and it was just collecting so much moisture from the ocean that it just kept dumping and dumping and dumping. 50 plus inches of rainfall occurring in a year is a lot for most areas, but to get it within a day or two is just, again, as they kept saying, unprecedented. And the reality of it is you're probably not going to design infrastructure that kind of event. It's so rare. Just economically speaking, it'd be very difficult for an agency to go in and try to protect the infrastructure, protect the people from an event of that magnitude. And that's, again, what we wrestle with as engineers and policymakers and even our elected officials is understanding what can we protect, and that goes back to risk. And risk isn't just the probability something is going to occur, it's the probability times the consequence. So you have to weigh in both sides of it. Do we protect one side of the river that has agriculture on it the same way we protect the other side of the river that has homes? And that's, again, where that's part of the conversation now, is how do we incorporate those kinds of assessments and evaluations in decision making? Where's the best place to spend the few dollars that we have? Where can we spend them to provide the greatest protection?
And so often the best, people want to live next to a river. They want
absolutely.
to live next to the
80%
ocean.
every 6% of the population of the country lives near water. So,
Thank you. 80% of the population lives on water. So, how far back do you go? How far do you want to have to walk from your house to get to the ocean, to get to the river?
Not too many elected officials want to tell people they can't live next to, or live in the house that their family has lived in for 200 years because it's been has repetitive losses. So how do you deal with those issues associated with moving people away from their land, moving people away from farm? That's what we're trying to do. And so that's a real dilemma. And when you've got an agency like FEMA and a program like the National Flood Insurance Program that's designed to help people that are being flooded, how do you keep that sustainable when you get structures that are continually damaged and have to be rebuilt?
And there are things that people can do, and there are things that people in parts of the world that experience flooding constantly, putting houses up on stilts and reinforcing the basements, or not having the
Floodproofing,
basement.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback off of what Mark was saying about weighing the consequences in urban area versus agriculture. And as the National Flood Insurance Program is up for reauthorization this month, one of the conversations I think we have too is the importance of agriculture. So a lot of times it does provide a buffer for urban areas. And keeping lands in agriculture gets back to floodplain management, how to keep people away from the water. Keeping lands in agriculture so that it can be that buffer for is
So basically, and there's a couple of things I want to follow up on. One is I want to get back to this idea that why is it helpful to have along the same riverbank some areas that are open space, whether it's for agriculture, whether it's something that water can go in and recharge. And the other is the sorry, they're setting up for the reception tonight. Shoot. What was
Maybe
it?
address that one, Ken.
Yeah.
Maybe we can think of the second part of that. But
Yeah.
in terms of
Yes.
the advantages of having what we call setbacks or open areas within large river systems is extremely important. I think we saw that in Houston in areas where we may have had open lands that can be used for storage. It can actually retain water for great periods of time without really causing any damage. And then you fill that in with development. Now all of a sudden you only get new damages because you have structures and potential loss of life in harm's way. But now we've lost that storage capacity. That water's got to go somewhere. It used to sit in here, now it's going to be moved somewhere else. And where does that water go? So we're getting more and more, I think as I said before, as we learn more and more about how our past land use policies are impacting our current situations, and we can now use adjustments to that to help us in the future. And so providing setbacks where we allow for more storage within the river or floodplain areas that can help attenuate some of those peak events. Again, they're not necessarily going to happen.
So, okay, setbacks and attenuate.
Okay.
Define.
So a setback would be instead of encroaching or putting levees, say, all the way up into the riverbank and having homes all the way up to the backside of those levees, you set those levees back. Now you've got a larger area which to convey flows. Again, your main river flow may be narrow, but you have that ability to use those setback areas for your peak events. And attenuate would be to reduce, or again, that storage effect can kind of shave off the peak, so to speak, of the storm. And now you're not dealing with as much runoff and discharge as you would if you're just flushing it through the system and trying to get it out to the ocean as quickly as you can.
And one of the things that we've talked to people about or looked at in other places, like we were in LA with the Green Alleys program and Chicago with permeable.
The whole green infrastructure program.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that really accelerates the speed and the amount of flooding that's going to occur is where things are just completely paved over. There's no place for the water to go, versus some of these pavements where the water can actually go through. So how does that work?
Well, go ahead. I can sort of talk to that because again, the green infrastructure, permeable pavements, other bioswales, other types of materials that are used to.
So like swales, the green area in the middle of the road.
Correct. So instead of it just running off and getting into our catch basin, storm-based system and flushing out to the ocean, there's two advantages of the green infrastructures. One is it's actually filter the urban runoff, so you get some water quality benefits. And then you also get the ability to percolate down into the groundwater, so you get water supply benefits.
And if it's percolating down, it's not going up.
The main advantage on those kinds of that kind of infrastructure is for your low flows, your small events, your annual events, and because you're really during a peak event like what's been experienced in Houston and others, really that kind of infrastructure you're not even going to see it. It's going to have essentially zero benefit. But what you do for the rest of the year is where you really get the benefit from those kinds of facilities. Again, water quality and water supply.
And so those are new projects or capital projects. But I want to address something for a moment.
Come in a little closer. You're in the shadow.
Okay. No worries. So recently, everybody's familiar with SB1 as the gas tax, and a lot of it is for road maintenance, right?
This is just California.
This is California. Thank you for that clarification. That's right. And so, but a lot of people are familiar with those levees, those blackhouses and weirs, a lot of that infrastructure is over 100 years old. And so we have, the department's done a study, a technical memorandum with stakeholders as well. And we discovered that we have 100 million annual shortfall in maintenance for what we call state plan flood control. That's a levees and weirs and bypasses that the state of California has guaranteed the federal government they will maintain. And so if you think about it, similar to your roads that you drive on potholes or everything, we have problems with our levees and weirs and bypasses that we try to maintain as well. And so if we don't take care of our current infrastructure, we talked about these new green projects. Those are new projects, and that's fine. Everybody loves things that are shiny and new, but we also have to make sure we're taking care of the infrastructure that we have in place.
Exactly. The other thing I want to circle back to on hurricanes, and I think it's really important to emphasize this, is there's really two main impacts from a hurricane. And one is the winds, and if it's getting blown all over the place, things getting knocked down with the high winds when the hurricane hits. But then there's the rain aspect. And so when we're talking about a hurricane stalling, so basically it's whipping around. It's early. You see all the photos of this
nice orange and red on the map.
Very nice big funnel looking kind of thing. And actually there's a column in the middle. And then so the hurricane hits, things start whipping around. But if it moves through quickly, then you get the impacts of the winds, but less of the rain. And that was something, we have a piece that we put together, and you can find on YouTube. It's called NOLA Knows Water. It was talking to citizens in New Orleans during a big water conference called WEFTEC. And all the water professionals were sitting there in the convention center, and we're saying, and it was right after Isaac. And we're saying, remember what happened, what this convention center was being used for 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear about water flooding and impacts, get out of the convention center and go talk to people. And we talked to bartenders and taxi drivers and street buskers and everything, and asked them about their experience of Katrina. Where Katrina, massive damage, and it was a lot of the winds. And then you had Isaac. Well, Isaac, let's all just sit out and drink hurricanes and watch the storm, which they tend to do out there. But then there it sat, it's stalled, and when the hurricane stops, it keeps raining and raining and raining. So it was really the flooding there.
Yeah.
That was different.
Yeah, and there's the wind also impacts your coastal surge too, where you get the waves and the coastal surge that runs up, and that's where we saw a lot of effect with Katrina, was on that surge, and then you get the levee failures, and again created the real level of catastrophe. We don't have that same that same level of or type of protection isn't necessarily consistent across the country. So different areas are going to be more susceptible to certain kinds of storms. Here in the West Coast, we have what used to be called the Pineapple Express. It's now called atmospheric rivers, where we get these extreme rivers, actually water rivers in the air that bring all this moisture in, and then they hit the mountains, and they get they cool off because they're pushed up, and you get cooler air temperatures, which then reduces the atmosphere's capacity to hold water, and that's where we get rain. So you get these just certain atmospheric conditions that occur that create these more unprecedented kind of events. The thing is, we're getting smarter and better technology with the radar and other satellite imagery, where we can and measuring surface water temperatures in the ocean can tell us when these types of events may occur. When the conditions are good for, like you get a tornado watch because the conditions are good for a tornado, as opposed to a tornado warning when there's actually been one cited. Same type of thing. We can identify when the conditions are good for these type of events to occur, and we can prepare better for them. I think we saw a lot of that with Harvey, with the preparation in Houston that they were able to do. I just don't think they were prepared for the duration of which nobody could have projected it was going to last that long.
And as it pertains to California, that intelligence is key component to our flood response system. So the state of California partners with the National Weather Service, and we're able to see that along with our river forecasting center, California Valley River Forecasting Center. So you're able to look at the weather as it comes in, predict how much rainfall is coming down, what your snow levels are, what your reservoir capacities are, through the gauges of river forecasting, know what your levels in your rivers are. And through all of that, you can say, all right, we need to release more water out of the reservoirs, or it's going to reach flood levels in the levee system. You've got to deploy folks to, or evacuate folks if that needs
Close roads.
Yeah.
And I mean, these things are very dynamic, and they change constantly. There are things that we can predict, and there are things that we can't.
That's right.
Basically, I mean, we can look at the satellite imagery. We can see how big, how wide across a hurricane
How fast it's
is,
moving.
how fast it's moving at a given point in time,
Right.
and you know how much moisture is in there. But we can't tell where it's going to go. We can't tell where it's going to land. We can't tell how long it's going to sit in one place. You know, it's like a top that just kind of spins and it stops and then it moves and you know.
So that's a great link back to this conference, right?
Yes.
So all the conversations that are occurring here, it's about connecting people together for these conversations. Because when an emergency comes, and you don't know exactly where it's going to go, you need to know who to talk to, who to call, who to ask for help. And that's where these conversations are key for us as floodplain managers and emergency responders to come together and know who those contact points are.
And that's, yeah.
And learning from each of these events. Unfortunately, they happen, but we certainly don't want to just bury our heads and say, okay, well, hopefully it doesn't happen again. We want to be prepared. And we can't prevent them, and we may not be able to design to protect them, but the idea of being more resilient through them. So we may not be able to protect ourselves, but we want to be able to be still functional on the emergency response side primarily. We keep our critical infrastructure protected. Our hospitals and our emergency responders need to be protected at all costs. And then how do we recover so that we're getting back to operations, businesses that need to make money, people that need to be back in their homes, in a safe way. How do we recover quickly? So I think that's where we've really advanced a lot too in this idea of resiliency and our ability to protect ourselves and recover.
Yeah. And the recovery part, I mean, that's really critical, and that's something that we're working on now with Water Citizen, is developing a dedicated site and online community for what we call Harvey impacted persons or hurricane impacted persons, otherwise known as hippies. And you gotta laugh, folks. Oh, seriously, one of the most important things as someone who's worked in water planning and in emergency response as part of that is recognizing that when a water-related disaster happens, you can't argue with it, you can't negotiate with it, you can't sue it, you can't sue a hurricane. You just got to deal with it, and hopefully and these are devastating, and people's lives are changed forever, and whether people sink into depression or if they can bounce back, it's human resilience as well as economic resilience.
And in terms of trying to create resilient communities, we're always advocating that people know the flood risk, right? So talk to your local jurisdictions and find out your county, your city, where are you in the floodplain, and where do you go for help? Who can you call?
Exactly, and that's what we plan to do with the Healing Harvey community or Home for Hippies, is really provide that direct access. Normally when we're doing this, we'll let you know in advance when we're doing a live stream, so you can have your Q&A with the experts as we bring them on specific questions. Certainly flood insurance is a question that a lot of people have down there right now, and just the whole question of what to rebuild and what to write off and move on.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be rebuilt. Yeah. And that's the big question, and it affects people, and that's the hard part, but it's also the important part. It's one thing to put policy on paper. It's another thing to really see how it impacts people.
Yes. We're filming. Okay. Do you want to say hello? You want to say hello on camera? This is John Moyner. This is the reason I'm here. so we're setting up now for the reception. How far are we done? I don't even know. I haven't kept track of time. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to circle back to a couple of the other things that we're going to see this week. So, and yeah, on Hurricane Harvey, you'll see a lot more from us coming up. But there's a lot that's going on here in California. Now, by the way, so you guys said that this is a regional chapter. Are there floodplain management associations being developed in other parts of the country?
Absolutely, Mary. Once you talk about those.
We are one region serving California, Nevada, and Hawaii. Some regional chapters serve a state. For example, Texas has its own floodplain management association. Arizona has its own. The Northwest has a floodplain management association. So really, the state is covered by the national organization and then the regional chapters.
Yeah, and we all do similar things, but they may have different focuses and different priorities in terms of how they implement their own local programs. And then ASFPM, the national organization, they serve,
which is the
Association of State Floodplain Managers.
Association of State Floodplain Managers.
So their focus is really more on policy and legislation. So they'll be up at Capitol Hill testifying to Congress
and are those all state employees, or does that also include them consulting firms and the
right? So the membership of ASFPM is both. The one difference between that and our local chapter, their board of directors are all public agency, typically state floodplain managers. So that's at a much higher level in terms of the public safety. But we're doing a lot of the same things. We deal it more at the local, or in our case, a regional level, where they're looking more at national policies. And then we
the FEMA folks and people dealing with flooding at Bureau of Reclamation, Corps of Engineers, those are all doing it through. Well, that wouldn't be associated with state floodplain managers.
In all of them, in both, yes. Yeah. So they will be participants in, just as we have representatives on our board from all those agencies. Other chapters will, as well as ASFPM will have input from those agencies via these kinds of conferences, but also through committees and other activities where they'll get that kind of input and also the output to those agencies as well. It's not just one way; it's basically a two-way conversation.
Well, the Army Corps of Engineers, for example, they have their Silver Jackets program, which essentially partners with state agencies to plan for exactly what we're talking about. So it's coordinating their way of coordinating with local governments.
And I mean, all floodplains, they're all very local. It's not like you're dealing with a giant dam, Colorado River. You're dealing with on a much more regional level. You've got to work with the local folks when you're done.
It all starts at the local level, absolutely. Yeah.
Now there is a river locally that you guys are going to be visiting. We'll finish on this.
Just a small little river called the Los Angeles River. It's been probably the most filmed river, I think, in the movie industry.
Let's name some of the films. How many films can you name? Okay. Jack Grease.
Italian Job.
Oh, Grease.
Grease.
Italian
Terminator.
Job.
Italian Job.
Dozens of them.
So basically, you can drive a car down this thing, and it looks like
it's
just a canal.
Folks. Yeah.
It's concrete.
Yeah.
That's a river. It's not. It doesn't look, well, or at least it has in the past.
Yes.
So what's been happening with that?
So there's been a real concern effort for years to try to figure out ways to remove the concrete and restore the river back to a more of a natural environment. Now there's
Green banks and plants and animals.
and there have been even associated things as much as like what you see in the Riverwalk in San Antonio, bringing in other aspects, parks, integrating linear parks, and getting basically the people back to the river. And so,
having it look like a river.
And having it look green, right? We can't just paint, well, we could just spray paint the concrete. But
some people have done that.
Yeah. And again, how do you do that but still maintain the flood conveyance and protection that the river provides now?
So the reason why it's concrete was to keep it from
convey the most water.
Yeah, it has the least amount of resistance to flood flow and also from erosion. So it's the most sustainable from a flow control standpoint, but it's really one-dimensional in that regard.
So and basically, when a river hits a flat area, it's going to start doing the meanders. And so when you get those channelization, you get the water going straight. It carries more down, farther, and it also keeps it from flooding again.
Hopefully,
yeah. That was the, it's not like people did these things, deliberately to do something bad. It was with the best of intentions.
Yeah.
different time, different environment, literally and figuratively,
Different
in terms of
priorities.
how we do things today. But yeah, we had an exciting opportunity to go out on Friday. LA County Department of Public Works is going to be leading a tour of a portion of the river that they're looking to prioritize to revitalize, basically to restore back. There's no way they're going to be able to do the entire how many miles of river it is, but I think it's about 40 miles what they're really kind of focusing on. That they're looking, but they're going to have to do it, in pieces. There's no way, there's not enough money to do it all at once. But really looking at what are the first steps, and it's going to affect all the properties along the river, because typically you can't put the same volume in the same width if you're going to remove the concrete. So talking about expanding the river section, providing some of these setbacks that we talked about earlier to provide more flow conveyance and that attenuation benefit that you get, but also getting people down, getting opportunities for parks in the river, back to your multi-benefit kind of a structure.
Educational
Exactly.
programs, lots
Bike
of
trails,
signs.
all that stuff. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes,
And there are a lot of small projects going on up and down the river that are going to be all eventually that is to tie them all together into this large revitalization project that the Corps is working with the county and all the stakeholders along the river to bring to fruition. And we have an opportunity to see that in our lifetime. Not the whole thing, but there'll be at least I think some work done.
There'll be parts that you could actually not drive on the river, but
Actually,
yeah, paddle
get
through.
in a kayak, float down an inner tube, who knows?
Well, and actually, if you've been following Water Citizen for, we just had our 5th anniversary last week.
Congratulations.
Yep. Phew, it lasted that long. And we do a lot on water and film, and one of the prominent films related to water is Tatum McCarver's film about her husband George Wolfe putting into the river with a bunch of friends. Basically, they filmed as he and his friends in kayaks and canoes and whatever else they were in were essentially one of the reasons why it was left the way it was that people said it wasn't navigable. So navigable means that you can put a boat in and you can navigate your way down the river. The fact that they were able to put in boats and go down the river showed it was navigable, and therefore was protected and is being restored. I mean, that's basically the short version.
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
Yes, pretty close. Yeah, put it in a different category for sure.
Yeah. So, Lisa Jackson, when she was head of EPA, announcing that yes, the LA River was going to be restored. And
I think it's something that really the locals want, and that's what it takes. You can try to shoehorn something in, and if the locals don't want it, and if it's not supported politically or by the communities that are impacted, it's not going to happen. So this is it's one of those perfect projects where everybody wants it, everybody would like to see it work. Again, obviously the engineering behind it is important because we still have to provide that protection, and then how do you pay for it? So those are some big questions still to be answered, but it's one of those fun projects that you want to be involved with because it's something that you see value in.
And it is an opportunity for people who are passionate about water, for people who care about the water in their communities, to become more informed. And that's certainly a role that Water Citizen has tried to play, to bring together, the everyday citizen who sees the river in their community, who wants to be part of protecting that river, of helping to restore the river or the coast, lakes, whatever, working with the agencies, working with the engineers, working with the associations, and not sort of a faceless bureaucrats or whatever. These people have real faces, real lives. They really do care, and anything that we can do to help bring this entire water system together, we're more than happy to do so.
Thank you, Kate.
So thank you so much for having Water Citizen here, and for taking time. Let's go ahead and get out of the way so we can finish the reception. We will be here all week, folks, and keep watching. The other videos will probably be much shorter. This is just the intro, but it's going to be an exciting week, and thanks for coming.
Take care.
Thank you.